Well, getting into the ingredients and why we choose particular ingredients, early on with our very first line, which we just called the nutraceutical line, we wanted to use things like vitamin C and alpha lipoic acid and grapeseed extract and interesting ingredients for their times, or interesting nutraceuticals. We did not want them synthesized for reasons that I've already discussed with the biocompatibility thing. So they had to be natural or naturally derived. And again, the reason for that is our bodies recognize them more. And we really, from that early time when we used nutraceuticals, I like the idea of and by the way, one of the things I should have mentioned earlier is that every ingredient back in the Nutramax days we called food state, which simply meant it was the molecular structure of that ingredient was identical to those found in food. And again, that ties into the biocompatibility thing. Well, I like the idea of doing that topically as well. So early on, I challenged my scientists to find a way to incorporate superberry extracts, because I love the idea of the polyphenols. I love the idea of the different phytonutrients that you get in berries or any richly colored fruit or vegetable. And back then, I'm talking maybe 2003, 2004, there wasn't exactly what I wanted. So although we use those kinds of things and they are naturally derived, I would look at the raw material and it was a white powder. So I said, that is not the pigment of a blueberry. Where's the pigment? And unfortunately, the ingredient producers at that time didn't have the ability to basically extract that and have it to where it remained stable and would have efficacy on an ongoing basis. So nevertheless, those are the kind of ingredients we sought out early on. Fortunately, that evolved and we were able to purchase some technology a few years later, which was a proprietary freeze drying process where we could actually freeze dry things like kale and blueberries and blackberries and raspberries, and we'd get an incredibly rich in color powder. Blueberry, for example, is a dark purple, so the powder that we'd get from that would be dark purple. And the harvest, the way it would work was we'd literally get the fresh material organically produced. It would go straight into harvest. We'd end up with our raw material, and the Japanese company that we shared the technology with, or we actually purchased the technology from, they would run trials on the anthocyanin. That's a phytonutrient that's in grapeseed, for example, in a blueberry skin. That the pigment is where those phytonutrients are. And in a fresh blueberry, it'd be approximately 28%. In our finished powder, it'd be about 28%. We never had one lower than 26.5%. And interestingly, we would test those materials 6 months after harvest, 8 months after harvest, a year after harvest, and we'd still have that anthocyanin content above 26%. So there's really no dissipation during that time. The next thing I did is I challenged my team to be able to put that in skincare products. So powder is one thing, and it remains stale. Putting it in a liquid, you have bacterial and microbial issues and all of that. I did not want to use any nasty preservation, any parabens, anything like that. I challenged them to come up with a way to have that stable, even if it meant we refrigerated for a period of time. And whatever preservation they used had to be 100% natural. Well, they found some different plant extracts and some enzymes that in fact enable us to do that. And a couple of years later, we created the Live Skin Moderne line and named it Live because I like the idea of the connotation that there were live active materials, live plant materials, the anthocyanins I mentioned, the different phytonutrients. I like the idea of that. I also thought, well, let's enforce it one step further. I think everybody felt or feels that the idea of drinking a smoothie, I'm drinking something that's good for me, and there's all these wonderful nutrients in the smoothie. So we decided to call the Live products smoothies. And in fact, we have a whole line of them, from what you cleanse your face with, a cleansing gel smoothie. We have something called a refreshment spritz that you can use as a toner, or you can just use as a pick-me-up throughout the day. You basically spray it on your skin. The daytime moisturizer is called a breakfast smoothie. We have different treatment smoothies. We've got an eye smoothie. We even have a dinner smoothie. So we name them kind of meals for your skin, with everyone having the smoothie attached to it. So reinforce the idea that we're feeding our skin. That was of critical importance to me, because all those superfoods I'm talking about and using that special technology to harvest them, technically we are feeding our skin. Even though it's on the top of our skin, those nutrients and those antioxidants, the antioxidants, for example, would fight free radicals on the skin and protect your skin from environmental aggressors. And then other nutrients like the polyphenols that I mentioned, they basically feed into the skin and can actually enter the epidermis. That's another thing we did with some of these molecules. We reduced the size of them so they're able to actually penetrate the epidermis and have effects where they can actually feed the skin. That was one of our biggest accomplishments, and one of my favorite things we've ever done at Skin Moderne is get live, not only from concept, but to launch it and have it become as successful as it has. And to this day, there's no other skincare actually putting real superfood extracts in there. You look at different products that might say it contains kale, it might contain blueberry. Where's the color? And that's so important for me because, again, that's the pigment is where those anthocyanins lie, or the other phytonutrients.